IMHO 101 Jams, home of number one for classics in today's hip hop and R&B, home of the Cheryl Underwood Radio and the Rise and Grind Morning Show. You think I have that by now, Razor? I shouldn't be stumbling at all by now.
Trying to figure out what's going on.
Hey, but now you know what it is, because we got such a lineup today. We just back to back, we have a bunch of people who are focused on our city and our area. So without further ado, we want to make sure we introduced her, and then we're going to bring her back, right at the top of next hour for her to go through her main issues that she has for the city here. So we have Heather Hill for City Council of Charlottesville, and her slogan is listen, engage, act. Vote November 7th, hillforcville.com. Heather, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed my time here in the spring and glad to be back.
Yeah. So for those who have not met you, or for those who may not be familiar with Heather Hill, just please let them know who you are and why you're running.
Sure. So I've been in Charlottesville since 2003. My husband and I have 3 children who've been born here and will obviously be raised here. They are 7, 5, and 2. I'm going to say hello in case they're listening. I think they might be out there. But I've been a neighborhood leader in the community over the last 5 years, and that's certainly given me a perspective that I think is unique in terms of how our city is operating and how it's managed. Along with some work I've done with nonprofits, again, engaging with the city, allowed me to look at my experience. So my background is industrial and systems engineering, so I'm definitely a systems person and look at things systemically. I think that too often we look at issues in silo and not really understanding that they have impacts on things down the road. And so I really feel like that's the way that we need to be looking at our city and those interrelationships that we have, both with the priorities that we are facing, as well as our community and the people in it. I have my master's in business, which I did get here at the University of Virginia's Darden School, and I think that those experiences, make me a unique candidate, especially versus those other experiences that are currently on council. But really, for me, what got me was becoming a candidate, and really in an effort to get out there and understand the priorities of our community. I think we talked about this last time when I was here. I was kind of middle stream. I made a really big effort to go down every street in our city and really listen to the needs of our community. And I've summarized that on my website under what I'm learning. It's hillforcville.com. And you can see that by voting precinct, it's all ratcheted up at a pretty high level at that point. But the top 5 themes that I heard, and it was amazing to me how many things I feel like that we are united on as a community and that we need to really be focusing. Too often I feel like our city's leaderships are looking at their own personal agendas versus really listening to the community and what the community is driving for, and what our priorities are. And so that's a commitment that I've made both in my campaign, and I'll be honest, like the campaign itself can be really tough. I mean, I can't tell you that I'm the thickest skinned person, and it's been an experience for me. Yeah. But the times that I get to go out into the community and be in front of people one-on-one and talking about their experiences has certainly inspired and energized me, and that's kind of been the core for me getting back to this campaign. Got you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break, pay some bills at the top of this hour. We'll be right back with Heather Hill to get into more of the issues. Remember, 422-9101, IMHO 101 Jams. We'll be right back.
Live from the Mountain Dew Studios in Charlottesville, it's 101.3 Jams.
101 Jams is a nonprofit community radio station. It is our mission to educate, inform, and entertain our listeners with local and national news and events while providing you the best of classic and new hip-hop and R&B. The views expressed on 101 Jams belong to those expressing them and do not reflect the views or beliefs of 101 Jams, the board of directors, or its parent company, Air Mix Virginia. To find out more about how 101 Jams serves your community, visit our website, 101jamz.com, or facebook.com/101jams.
Price Hyundai supports 101 Jams.
Hi, I'm Chris Gleason, General Manager of Price Hyundai on 29 North, and I'm coming to you on this station because at Price, we are locally owned and have supported local community organizations for almost 50 years. At Price, we know that discerning radio listeners make discerning car buyers. Thinking green and environmentally, Hyundai has 3 choices, including the new Ioniq, the Sonata Hybrid, and the Sonata Plug-in Hybrid. I invite you to visit us at Price Hyundai on 29 North or 24/7 online at jimpricehyundai.com.
Family means comfort and joy, except when it doesn't. For some people, time spent with family means yelling, degradation, intimidation, secrecy, and even emotional and physical abuse. As one of these people, you may feel isolated, as if you have nowhere to turn. But you're not alone. The Charlottesville Victim Witness Program is here for all victims of crime, no matter the situation. Relationship violence crosses all cultural and economic lines, and so do we, no matter who you are or what your story is.
here with Jesse Klink, Campus Director of American National University here in Charlottesville. Jesse, can you tell me more about American National's IT program?
Sure. Our network support degree can prepare you for Microsoft Server and Cisco certifications, as well as CompTIA's Net Plus, A Plus, and Cyber Focus Security Plus.
And you have lots of other career-focused programs, too.
That's right. We are currently enrolling for business, accounting, medical assisting, and phlebotomy. All programs offer small classes, flexible schedules, online learning environments, and career assistance.
Thanks, Jesse. The winter term application deadline is November 17th. On campus and online, you can contact American National University in Charlottesville at 434-220-7962 or visit an.edu for more information.
Support for the station today is coming from Elite Auto Restoration. Your vehicle is understandably important to you. It's your transportation, your portable office, your home away from home. And if it's damaged, you need someone on it yesterday. That someone can be Elite Auto Restoration. Their goal isn't to meet expectations, but to exceed them. And all work is backed by their no-hassle lifetime warranty. You can reach Elite Auto at 434-296-2948 or go by and see them at 22 Rosa Terrace off 6th Street, Southeast Charlottesville. That's Elite Auto.
IMHO 101 Jams. You are back, and we are talking to City Council candidate Ms. Heather Hill. So remember, y'all, vote November 7th, whichever way you go. But her website is hillforcville.com. And Heather, we actually have a caller who actually beat us to the punch before we got back home, before we could get to our current list. So let's go ahead and start with that. Let's not keep them waiting. In regards to our policing here, specifically stop and frisk, they want to know, do you agree with, would you support or not stop and frisk?
We certainly the review board is all the other part of that question too, so I want to make sure I don't forget. Relative to the stop and frisk, I think it's a positive thing that we are a community that collects that data. I'm a data person. I'm an engineer. I have a lot of data, as I just showed you the map that I put together. I think it's important that we are responsive, but it's one thing to get the data, it's another thing to do something with the data. And I think that we need to take meaningful steps to understand that data is compelling, and we need to be making ourselves accountable. And I think that the way to do that, as we were mentioning earlier when we were offline, is through a civilian review board. And I certainly would support us implementing that into our community. I mean, we need to be able to have accountability for our police force, and understanding, like, you know, what are the sources driving this data to be in a way that I agree it's compelling, that we need to be addressing it. And I feel like right now that they do have some infrastructure in place, but that group cannot actually do the review and provide any kind of guidance. It really seems really ineffective in the structure that we have today. And I think that the next step is really creating a more formal process so that we can have that accountability. If we look at what's happened this summer, I mean, a lot of people are frustrated and wanting answers. And I'm certainly one of those people too. At the same time, you know, I know some of those officers personally, and I recognize that they have children at home and they are given direction. I think that right now we are all looking for answers in terms of how we got to the point we did with this summer. But in terms of our stop and frisk data, I certainly believe we need more accountability, because it's compelling.
But let me get you to clarify. Accountability on behalf of the officers that's doing the stop and frisk, or the citizens that's being stop and frisk? When you say
I'm
accountability,
talking about the officers.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Sure.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right. All right. So, so that responsiveness and accountability of our culture for our city. You feel free to elaborate a little more on that in regards to a lot of what spearheaded what's going on in Charlottesville right now, what happened over the city. When it comes to things like whether or not these terrorist organizations come into our town, the different white supremacist groups, should they be able to set up shop? Is that their legal right? And as far as the monuments, do you feel they should be in a historic place, or should they just stay up publicly?
Relative to folks coming in, I think we need to have many more structures in place that are preventing hate groups from coming into our borders. We are a small town, and obviously we've now become an international stamp on the map with all the activities that have taken place. And unfortunately, you look at a town like Charlottesville of less than 50,000 people and expect that we're going to have this kind of activity, and we may not have had all the infrastructure set up in place, but now is the time that we need to correct that immediately and understand, where did these things break down for our community? Because right now our community is lacking trust in its government, and it's founded. And we need to build trust among our members of city council, among our staff, but also a trust between the community and those that are leading it. And I think that really comes with a more effective way of engaging our community.
What are your thoughts on this petition that's floating around to have the city council members, I guess their office revoked? I
have heard of that. I'm not... think it's kind of, I guess, a bold request. I think that we really, like I said, I think we really need to understand where was some of the accountability that happened throughout the summers, and I do believe that a lot of that, falls obviously both within our city's leadership in terms of elected officials as well as our city's management. I think it's too premature at this point to be calling for a revoking of every city council member. But I certainly understand the frustration that folks are feeling with our current government and how they feel that it has failed them. But I do think that we have to go through the process of this review and kind of see where does that leave us? Where does that accountability lie? And then we need to take action on that. As you said, my slogan is listen, engage, and then act. And we can't hesitate once we feel like we have that data. We need to be able to act on it and step forward, because that's the only way for our community to move forward. And that will have me transition then into the question you asked about the statues. And we talked about this in the spring. And I said, I went through a lot of communities, including our minority communities, and that was not a top priority for those folks. And some of them just felt like they wanted to understand the history. But at this point in our community, I think there is no choice but for us to have those statues move forward. I mean, get out of our community spaces, because they're going to be a constant reminder of the hate that has descended upon our community. And I just think that we need to heal. And that is one way that we can heal, is by getting those out of our public spaces and then recapturing those again.
I will say, though, that a lot of people are suspect of the report, the investigation of what happened on August the 12th, only because of the individual selected to lead the investigation and his relationship with the police department. So I know that you said your decisions as far as moving forward should be based on that, but
right. And I think in parallel, if the community is seeking it, and I've heard voices saying that we should maybe have a parallel assessment being done by a more neutral. I mean, but if people are concerned about if this is a biased group of people, is there a citizen review board of sorts that can be done just to assess what's happened in our community over the course of the summer? And I think that's a fair request to make. But I do think it's worth seeing through what this review uncovers. I'm cautiously optimistic that it's going to provide some answers that the community so desperately seeks. But it's important for people to participate, and I would encourage anyone who feels like they had an experience that day that might have been unique and hasn't been heard, go and speak with these folks. As a neighborhood leader in North Downtown, these parks within our neighborhood, I actually had opportunity to be part of the interview process and have my voice heard. And I really encourage anyone out there who wants to be part of that process to make their voices heard. It's not too late. They're still doing interviews, and I think that every perspective is important for them to be able to provide that thorough evaluation.
All right, and still in regards of what's going on in our neighborhoods, let's shift over a little bit to housing, because I noticed one of your key points is seeking innovative solutions to our housing crisis. And really, I think that kind of blends into where you talk about focusing city resources to address infrastructure deficits. I say that because there's a lot of minority business owners, small business owners, but they don't feel like that the Charlottesville is a place to maybe they can afford to really set up shop. And also when we talk about affordability, when we talk about our Section 8 housing, there's gentrification that goes on, and people either feel pushed out or feel like things are being built that they then can't afford. So when you look at housing and business development, where do you stand there? What's some things you like to do?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the business development part, because I do feel that affordability is not just with housing, it also really is affecting our businesses and their ability to stay in the city. Obviously, with the assessments that happened in the past year, that affected a lot of our small business owners. And we need to understand, beyond just that cost, what are other barriers from preventing our minority community from starting businesses in the city? And we need to try to block and tackle to ensure that we are removing those barriers in a way that we can have a more diverse set of businesses, namely in our downtown mall area, for example, and in other spaces. But when it comes to housing, I mean, it was the number one thing that I heard, just the affordability. And that affordability comes from people who need both subsidized housing as well as those who are retired. But we need to be careful, because the city just can't solve this alone. The biggest thing for me is really just partnering with those others that can provide the investments that we need to get us over the hurdle. Because the city is probably going to only be able to kind of upfront 10% of those funds that are going to help us kind of overcome some of the hurdles we have, and that can come in the form of our housing affordability programs, which they haven't adjusted the income levels for people that qualify for that since 2006, when that was first initiated. So it hasn't even been adjusted for inflation. So we need to be doing more to helping those folks that fall into that category. But at the same time, we need to be partnering with our housing authorities and private and developers in a way that we can invite them to the table, so that they're going to want to prioritize those projects over the projects that don't require them to build housing. And I know that you were speaking with this with Amy when she was in here earlier. Unfortunately, unless a developer is pursuing a special use permit, we don't have the requirement where they have to either give money or contribute affordable housing. So as a result, we need to be more bold in how we are inviting these developers in, so that we can take an entire project and really make a meaningful impact with real units, because right now the money can only go so far. If it's just going to sit there. It's not doing anything to build new units. And so I really feel like there are an infinite number of ways that we can even that playing field. And there are things around a progressive and equitable land tax, which provides incentives for developing for the highest use. And in this case, it would be for housing. So what are these other incentives that we can be offering to developers so that they are then motivated to be building housing and not just hotels? Because,
excuse me, I got a question for you. I don't mean to interrupt this, Razor. What do y'all plan on doing on getting people out of the housing that they're in to maybe going on to purchasing their own house? How are we approaching that? Because I'm not from this area, but what I've noticed is that we have generations from the grandparent to the parent to the child that just keeps going through the cycle. What are we doing, not just to get them housing, but to get them out of housing into the next step?
Well, I think it's gonna have to be a much more well-rounded approach. It's gonna have to be, how do we help reduce other costs for those families? Whether it's we're providing better and more affordable transportation options, whether it's our child care that we can provide in a subsidized form, so that those costs are just reduced, because it cannot just come from housing alone. We have to produce opportunities for work. Obviously, workforce development is a huge component, so people are earning the wages that are allowing them to be self-sustaining. But I think too often people just want to say it's just about housing. Housing is one component, and honestly, I do believe it is the foundational component. You want to have a safe, decent, affordable place to live. But in order to really take you to the next step and just for people to jump to that description that you've just said, we need to be supporting them in other ways, and that's through how we're training them to take those new jobs, what support we're giving them so that they can have the child care, that their children are in the best possible state while they are working, and how do we get them around this community transportation-wise. So that's how I look at it, more in a holistic approach.
Yeah, and within the same vein, to go to the business part that you had mentioned, as far as seeing the need, but do you have any ideas, or are you a part of any organizations in the community that have plans that you would like to see implemented to help bolster business, minority-owned business, small women-owned business?
Well, I just know I recognize that I feel like there's just too many, I guess there's not enough diversity in the types of businesses that we have in our community, and both in terms of the services they're offering and the people who are running them. And so, again, I just really think it comes back to understanding why is it that some businesses are able to start and to thrive here while others are struggling. And I'm certainly, as a person who, has been involved in business in my life in small ways, and I was an independent consultant before pursuing this opportunity. Understand that there are hurdles to succeeding, especially in a relatively small place like Charlottesville, because you're relying on a workforce that has some limitations, and that's why we have to be continuing to build that workforce and developing that workforce in a way that those folks can get the meaningful jobs. But I think it really does come down to more relationship building. Like, I want to sit down with those whether it's women or minorities, and understanding what are the hurdles. Also with our populations that are coming in as refugees, and they are wanting to start a new life here. What can we do to be building those bridges so that those folks can then provide a more diverse business group for our community? And that only benefits all of us. If we have successful businesses in this community, we're going to thrive, and we're going to provide the economic development we need for the broader community. And so I think it goes hand in hand.
So, all right. So Heather, are we, as we sort of bring it to a close here, as far as our K-12 and having kids ready and excited, hopefully get them excited about reasons to go to school, and then going whether it's trade, military, any kind of post K-12 life. Anything that you would like to see changed within our city school board?
Well, my children are pretty young in the system. So my daughter is a second grader at Burnley Moran Elementary, and so my kids are just starting to go through the school system. But I've had the opportunity to go and tour our middle schools and our high schools, and I think it's really important that we are providing the support systems for kids to understand what their options are, because not every kid is going to follow the same pathway, and it's okay. It's okay to take a different direction, but just to make sure that we are supporting the path that's most comfortable for them, whether it's pursuing trades after their K-12 or going on to a 2-year or to a 4-year degree. I feel like that we need to be providing those resources to them so that they feel like confident in understanding their options and exercising those options. And then obviously, if they want to pursue something and it becomes a cost issue, we need to find ways to support them financially to pursuing what they feel like is the most appropriate direction that they want to take.
Okay.
I guess maybe I'll take it back to housing. I have a quick question. I know that the budget is being cut for public housing or subsidized housing, correct?
I was not aware of that.
Okay. And so I was just wondering what the plans were in order to, service the people here if they're...
Oh, in terms of the operational budget for those?
Mm-hmm.
well, obviously, we also have a big hill to climb in terms of redevelopment of our public housing. It's a far cry from what I think people feel where it should be, and we need to be prioritizing that. But we also have to consider the impact that it'll have on those communities if we are going to redevelop. And so, as we come in, I think that's what comes back to engagement. We really need to make sure that we are building these relationships with these communities and understanding what their vision is for how we are going to improve their housing, whether it's through the maintenance or true, full redevelopment. And how that affects them, because we don't want to find people being displaced or minimize the impact that it has on displacement. I don't mean displacement permanently. I mean just during the transition phase. And obviously, we need to get the housing units up so that we're increasing the available quantities of affordable housing that we have. But when I think about our public housing and we think about redeveloping it, we just really needed to be doing it in sync with the community, so that as people have to move to a temporary location while that is being redeveloped, that we're minimizing the impact it has on the quality of their lives.
Okay, all right. Well, Heather, once again, thanks for joining us. Heather Hill for City Council. Listen, engage, and act. Vote November 7th. And if you want to learn more about her, her website is hillforcville.com. So, Heather, any closing comments?
No, as I've said to you in the spring, and it continues, I'm always one that wants to be committed to continuing to listen, and I think that approach that I took through this campaign is one that I would really want to continue when I'm in office. I'm coming into this as a community member and a mother, and I really just want to apply myself in a meaningful way for this community, and it really means I have to be responsive to this community. So I encourage anyone to reach out to me. My email is heather@hillforcville.com, and I just really appreciate you all having me and giving me the chance to talk to your listeners.